This license cost me blood. Hey, Lord God, I spent on an average. Hey guys, welcome back to Adaz Place. If you're new here, my name is Ada and I create content around living in Germany, my experiences in Germany. It's actually very helpful for those that want to come to Germany, those that want to know a little bit more about Germany, and so on and so forth. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my experience getting my German driver's license. I know it's been a long time coming. I promised to make this video when I got my license in April, but life happened. I wasn't able to come around to making it, but here we are. Anyways, today, in order to kind of understand or maybe kind of cover as much as possible, I asked ChatGPT what are some of the questions people that are willing to get their license or people that want to get their license in Germany, what are some of the questions that they usually ask? And we're going to be going through some of those questions. I will try to answer some of them, and then in the process of answering them, I will tell you about my experience. I hope that kind of helps. Okay, so let's get right into it. I already asked ChatGPT, and then there are 10 questions here. I'm going to pick some of the ones I think are very direct and straight to the point. And so if maybe you have additional questions or there's something that is a bit unclear, you can put it in the comment section and I'll try as much as possible to either answer or maybe make a follow-up video. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, one disclaimer though is that when it comes to getting license in Germany, it's a bit different. Everyone's experience is not exactly the same for various reasons, and so this is my own personal experience. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly the same way for you, but yeah, let's get right into the video. So the first question here is the age requirement of getting a driver's license in Germany. To be honest, I think it should be from 18. I'm not completely sure, but you kind of have to be like an adult. Number two, what documents do I need to apply for a driver's license? Now, in order to explain the kind of documents you need to apply for a driver's license, we first need to talk about what are the processes of getting a driver's license. If you already have a driver's license from your country and you want to kind of transfer to the German driver's license, and if you don't have a driver's license at all and you're starting from the beginning, you know, like you're starting from the scratch to get a driver's license. In my own case, I didn't have a driver's license from Nigeria, so I started from the scratch here. And for me, I did the compulsory theory classes and then the practical classes. However, in order for me to even be able to start theory and the practical, I had to first research for a driving school in Germany that spoke English. So it was an English driving school because my knowledge of German is not there yet, and I don't want a situation where they'll tell me to press brake and I'm accelerating. You get? Anyways, I wanted a situation where the communication would be great and I wouldn't have any issues understanding what the instruction was. So first things first is to get a driving school of your choice, either in German or in English. And then there are a couple of documents that of course you need. The first thing is to get an eye test. For me, the German driving school also offered an eye test and first aid training. So eye test and first aid training, these are, you know, two things now. And so I did that, got the first aid training, got the eye test done. For me, both of them were done on the same day. And on an average, it costs I think about 60 euros at the time. I started my driving license journey in 2023. I started in 2022 towards the end of 2021, but the classes itself started in 2022. I said towards the end of 2021 because that was when I went to the driving school to kind of make inquiries, and they said that they are completely booked and I had to wait until, you know, the next session, and it was going to start in January. So my point here is if you want to get a driver's license next year, you already need to start this year to, you know, do some research on the driving school that is closest to you. Okay, so I got my first aid, I got my eye test, and then I went to the government. So you also have to get an appointment at the foreigners office closest to you, like within your district. You know, have to tell them that, okay, hey, you want to get a driver's license and so on and so forth. They'll give you a letter, and that letter contains the duration at which you need to pass the exam. Typically in Berlin, I don't know for other cities because I heard that it's different in other cities in Germany. But in Berlin particularly, my understanding is that it takes 1 year for you to get the theory test. And then in that 1 year, when you get the theory test done, you need to pass your practicals. Otherwise, you start the process from the beginning. And so if you want to start this, you need to be ready physically, mentally, spiritually. I'm not even joking. So yeah, you don't start this process if you're not ready to start the process. And so you need to think about it very well. Once you're ready to start, you need to commit to it. And it's, believe me, it takes time. It takes a lot of resources. And I will explain as I continue. So yeah, regarding the documents that you need. So first off, you need to check if you already have your driver's license from your home country, or if you're going to get a new one here, you need to get a driving school. You need to get your first aid. You need to get your eye test done, and then you go to the foreigners office in your district to get like the permission or like the letter for your driving school saying that you want to start the process of getting your German driver's license. The next question here is, how many driving lessons are required and what is the average cost? Driving lessons that are required and the average cost. Now, again, if you have your license from your home country and you're getting your license here for the first time, two different processes. If you have from your home country, you don't necessarily need to sit for the theory classes. However, you need to pass the theory exam. So you can decide to, study on your own, but you have to pass the exam. Again, remember, within the duration that the German foreigners office has given you on the letter, within that duration, you need to pass the exam. Okay. Now, in my own case, as I said, I didn't have my license from Nigeria. I was getting my license here. So I had to do the compulsory theory classes. And if I remember correctly, I did the classes for 6 or 7 weeks. And altogether, I paid 695 euros. Let's just say 695 euros. I know it was almost 700, but it wasn't 700. So let's just say 695. We're going to do a calculation on how much this whole thing cost me. I did the theory classes for that long. The theory classes at the time was 2 times a week, and it was usually on, I think, Mondays and Wednesdays, or Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm not 100% sure, but it was 2 times a week. The duration of the classes, it was for 90 minutes, and in the class they kind of break down the traffic rules, the traffic signs, what you need to be aware of. It's actually a very helpful class, to be honest. And you see people like yourself that also want to get the license. Some people, they even have their license from their home country, but it's probably expired, and then they had to do the theory classes here. So there are different cases. However, if you have a valid license from your home country, you can skip this process. You don't have to pay for the class. You just go straight into the exam. When it comes to the exam itself, I would not say that going for the classes helps me with the exam. The classes, again, they're general. And if you're like me, that you have little to zero knowledge of how cars work, it's a lot of information. But if you already understand the way cars work, and the way, like, you already know how to drive a bit, then it becomes a little more easier. But you need to be careful not to allow your knowledge of driving from your country to interfere with what is applicable in Germany. A lot of people that know how to drive, or they are driving in their country, they don't get their license as quickly as they think they will in Germany because of this interference. Different countries have different laws and different ways they drive. In fact, the worst is if you're driving in Nigeria. The way we drive in Nigeria and the way it is here, completely different. So if you think you want to use that same mindset to drive here, it will be very difficult for you to pass the exam. So you have to unshackle yourself from the shackles of Nigerian driving, and begin to open yourself to the way they drive here. For instance, I drove a little bit in Nigeria, and it was just a friend that was teaching me how to drive, so it wasn't like I could drive. I was only driving in very serene areas and very quiet areas. But I know that I mean, so in some places in Nigeria, the how do you say, the traffic lights, whatever, is not really a thing. I mean, there are some cities in Nigeria that you have to obey the traffic signs and all of that. But to the best of my knowledge, I learned how to do it a bit in Anambra State, so in Oka, when I was in school. And there wasn't really traffic lights that I don't know, I don't remember. However, here there is something called the right before left rule, and this applies in corners where there is no traffic sign. You have to first of all look right before you drive. It's a bit my point is, be careful not to interfere your knowledge of how to drive in your old country here, because the rules can be slightly different. So yeah, that was for the theory classes. The theory exam itself costs about 25 euros for each of the exams. Personally, I wrote the exam twice. The first time I wrote it, I failed it. And in retrospect, I think then I just felt like, oh yeah, I was just going to go and farms it, It's not just the exam. But that exam is very easy to pass and also very easy to fail. Reason being that for some of the questions, they give you, say for instance, 4 options. 3 out of those options are the correct answers to that question. However, if you go select 2 instead of the 3, you fail the entire question. So you need to be extremely careful when you're writing these exams. Personally, I used an app to study. I think the name of the app is called Click Drive, if I remember correctly. Click Drive. The way I say if I remember correctly, as if I got this thing like years ago. No, I actually got my license this year in April. But yeah. Anyways, so the app I use is called Click Drive. I remember when I was trying to study the app, when I was trying to study on the app, they give you questions and then you choose your answer and they tell you why this is the answer, So even if you're right, you need to understand why you are right. If you're wrong, you also need to understand why you're wrong. That way, if you see this question in a different way, twisted, however manipulated, you'll be able to get the answers right. So the first time I wrote my exam, I was like, oh yeah, let me just do this very fast, keep it moving. I failed. So I came back home, and if you fail, you cannot come back like the next week to write the exam. You can only do that if you go back to your driving school and get an additional, I think, 3 hours of study, and they need to sign that you came here after you failed the exam and you did an additional hours of studying. That's the only way you can come back to write the exam the following week or the following day. Otherwise, you have to stay for 2 weeks at least before you come back and write the exam. But me, I wanted to do everything like very fast, because in my mind, my delusional mind, I thought I could get this license in 6 months. Anyways, let me continue. 6 months, oh Lord. Anyways, the second time, after I had gotten that letter from my driving school, I went back home. So in the app, the more you do sessions, it's kind of recorded, how many percentage you've gone, different levels. There are different sections of the questions. You have questions about traffic, questions about the parts of the car. There's no mathematics in this thing. I'm not even joking. Like, when I was studying this, I was like, who is going to calculate distance with velocity? But you need to know it though, because if the thing comes out in the exam and you don't know how to calculate all these things, you will fail and you come back again. But it was fun, I wouldn't even lie. I think the second time I was a bit more patient, I was a bit more careful, and then I cleared out my entire history on the Click Drive. I went to the exam sessions and started from the beginning. I think on this app there are about 3,000 or 4,000 questions, and out of these 4,000 questions, 30 of it would be out. I think now they've updated the number of questions you need to answer, and I think there are more questions you need to answer. I think they do this after some years. They increase the number of questions and increase the requirements and all of that, so it's more things to study. So the earlier you start it, the better for you. So yeah, I cleared out my entire history. I started studying again from the beginning, this time much more carefully, and yeah, I passed the exam the second time, which was amazing. So now back to the calculation. If we add the amount, actually I should be doing the calculation here. I should write this down. Okay, so I have my pen and paper. Let's do some maths. how, on an average, how much it cost me. I'm sure this is not going to be like 100% accurate because I don't have all of the records right now, but it's going to give you like an idea on an average how much it cost me. So I said for the theory classes, plus or minus 695 euros. Then for the government appointment, I think I paid about 50 euros there to go to the government. Then for the first aid and eye test, I paid about 60 euros. Then for the theory exams, I wrote it twice, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 25 euros each. So let's just say 50 euros for the theory exams. Then for the practical, that's where the main game is, because it's enough for you to know how to drive, how do you say, in your mind, like in theory, but if you don't know how to do the practicals, it's also something. And but before I talk about the practical, I also remember I took some simulation class. The simulation class, what it does, or what they do there, is that you drive but not physically on the road. So they use like a machine that gives you the feel of driving. And I think for an hour it costs about 50 euros, and I think I did that 4 times. Yeah, I think I did that either 3 times or 4 times. Let's just go with 3 times. So I did it for 3 times, and that's like 150 euros. So for simulation classes, but this simulation classes is not compulsory, so you don't have to do it. The reason I did it was because I thought that with the simulation class I wouldn't have to do a lot of physical driving, like the actual practical driving, because then I already have like an idea of how to move the vehicle, how to do this, how to do that, blah blah blah. But brothers and sisters, that was not what happened. Okay, now another thing that factors into the cost, remember we're still talking about the average cost, is the kind of car you decide to drive. Me, as a coconut head, I said, if I'm going to learn how to drive in Germany and it's already costing me money, I'd rather go for the manual vehicle. Brothers and sisters, that was a mistake, because with a manual vehicle it even takes you more time, because you need to learn how to move the clutch, do this, do that. And for someone that had no prior idea about how to drive a manual vehicle, it was a lot. So with a manual vehicle, if you know how to drive with a manual vehicle, then the license allows you to drive both manual and automatic. And since I wasn't planning on buying a car immediately, I felt if I was ever going to rent a vehicle and it's a manual vehicle, at least I should be able to drive it. Actually, it's not a bad idea. It actually was not a bad idea. But the truth of the matter is that the last time I traveled to Spain, my friends and I rented a car, and it was a manual vehicle, and I was not even interested in driving it at all, because as it was an automatic vehicle, I probably would have, like, okay, yeah, no problem, let me drive. Manual, like, can't be me. Anyway, so I started with a manual vehicle, and at first when I asked on an average how many classes do I have to take, the lady was like, if you had no prior knowledge, you probably take maybe 10 to 15 classes. I asked one of my friends that got her license in Italy, and she said, oh yeah, that she took about 16 to 18 classes and she got her license. I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. I'll do about, on an average, bad as a bad, 20 classes, and I'll get my license. Yeah. For each of those classes, it cost 85 euros. 85 euros for 90 minutes, if I remember correctly. 85 euros for 90 minutes. And now I'm looking at 20, classes. Ladies and gentlemen, I ended up taking about 40 classes. I'm not even joking. I wish I made this up, but because as I was paying the money, my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I was seeing my savings go down the drain. At the point I even wanted to stop, but I'm like, I already committed so much money in this thing. Let me just continue. Lord God, this license cost me blood. At first, when I was almost at 16 classes, and I asked my teacher when I'm going to go for the exams. Another thing to know is that in Germany, when you're going through the practicals, your examiner determines when you're qualified to go for the exam. If you're going for the exam, the student cannot say, oh yeah, I've done 2 classes, let me go for the exam. No, the examiner has to be the one to tell you, okay, you're good, you're ready to go for the exam. There's a little bit of controversy around this because it feels as if, if the examiner does not like the student, they make the person keep coming and coming and coming. That's what I thought at first. But the truth of the matter is, at the time, even with the 16 classes, I was still not very confident with driving. And if you go for the exam, the practical exam itself with TUV, as TUV is a company that's in charge of, driver's license examinations, practical lessons in Berlin. The exam itself cost about 125 euros, thereabouts. Now, for the school to prepare you for the exam, you need to take additional classes and you need to pay a certain amount. I know that whenever I was going to go for the exam, I was keeping a budget of around 490 euros to 500 euros. So imagine writing an exam when you're not even prepared for it. That's 500 euros lost. So when I told my teacher, oh yeah, that I wanted to go for the exam, and he told me that I wasn't ready, I was a bit hot. I wasn't even like, because I'm like, do people think I'm here to pay your do you think you want to use me to build a house in Germany? I'm here, but I thought of it and I'm like, see, let's be honest. Let's tell ourselves the truth. You're not ready for this exam. And if you go through this, you end up spending money. And to be honest, my teachers, they were actually really nice people. They were really nice. We ended up being friends. They were super nice to me. And I didn't think that they were going to intentionally try to rob me, So I just had to take that mindset out. And that thing too is that some people end up fighting with their teachers because of this. Imagine you're fighting with the person that has the say in your exam. Make it make sense. I've heard stories of someone that went for the exam after, they had like a disagreement with the teacher. Immediately the exam started, the teacher just said like, oh yeah, no, we're going to end it. That money is gone. I'm not even kidding. Like the money the person's paid for the exam, the time, everything is gone. They had to come back again for the exam. But yeah, besides the point, let's talk about the average cost. We're still on the average cost. So for 85 euros, I had on an average 40 classes. 40 times 85. How much are we looking at? I'm just saying on an average. It could be a little bit less than that, but I am 100% sure I took at least 35 classes. 100% sure I took at least 35 classes. The remaining 5 classes was like an addition when I was going for the exam. Because if you're going for the exam, you have to take like additional classes just to be sure that you're fit, blah, blah, blah. That's what I'm saying. Plus or minus 40 classes. 85 euros each. That was about 3,400 euros. This is just for the classes. Now, when it now comes to the exam itself, you remember I said that for each of the practical exams, it costs, with TUV, it cost me about 118 euros for the exam itself. Then for the driving school to organize the exam for me, it cost an additional plus or minus 250 euros. And then I had to take like some classes for that. So let's calculate the amount for TUV and the amount for the teachers to organize the class for me. For TUV, 118. And then for the driving school, how many classes exactly did I did? Let's see if I can count. It's a lot. In total, I actually did 49 classes. Hey! Chineke me. Hey! But to be fair, part of the 49 classes included the compulsory classes and all of that. So back to the amount of money it was going to cost for the driving school to organize the lessons for me. It was about, let me just put plus or minus 250 euros. And then there are compulsory classes that had to be taken in order for me to qualify for the exam. So one of the classes is called the special driving classes. That is cross country. And in the cross country, you are driving from one city to a different city. So for me, I drove from Berlin to Frankfurt Oder. It was 3 hours of driving on the expressway, on the motorway. It was really nice. It was actually very interesting, I won't even lie. And it cost 300 euros. And then the motorway driving, that was just completely on the Autobahn, was about 240 euros. And nighttime driving, because they needed to be sure that I could drive like at night. The way you drive during the daytime is not the same way you drive at night. It's slightly different because at night there is reflection from the lights. It could blind you, how to manage your lights and all of that. It cost 180 euros. How much have I calculated so far? The amount of money spent on this, I wouldn't lie to you, is crazy. How much I spent to get my license in this country. And that's what someone would tell me. that I should not obey speed signs. You see, it's one thing getting a license, it's another thing maintaining that license. Because if they collect the license from you, no. Let's not speak negative here. Okay, so let's do a calculation of everything so far when it comes to money. So first thing here, we have the practical classes, which I already averaged at 40 classes, 85 euros each, and it costs 3,400 euros, plus the theory classics, 695, plus the government appointment, 50, plus first aid and eye test, 60, plus the simulation, which were, I said, 50 euros per class, and let's just say I did 3 times. Well, no, I did more than that, but 3 times, 150 euros, plus the TUV exams. So the TUV exams, I wrote mine 3 times. It was on the 3rd time that I passed. Each of the exams cost 118 euros. But of course, this is my own. For me, I wrote 3 times. For some people, they could even write more. Some people, I have a friend that actually wrote hers once and he passed it. Amazing. For me, because this is my own experience, I'm going to calculate it 3 times. 118 times 3. So, and then, as I said, the driving school, for them to organize the exams for me, I had to pay an additional plus or minus 250 euros each time I was going for the exam. So in addition to the 118 I was paying, I had to pay an additional 250. So 250 times 3 as well. Then plus the special classes, so the cross country, which is 300 euros, plus motorway, which is 240, plus night time, which is 180 euros. Hey! What have become of my life? At the end, I spent on an average 6,179 euros to get a German driver's license. Jesus! We move. Was this my budget? No. My budget was 2k. I'm like, but that's about 2k. But you know, and that's why I say you have to be spiritually, physically, financially, mentally ready. Because the process, when I started, again, they told me 16 classes, as worst case 20 classes, I ended up doing 40. What was the average? About 2,000 to 3,000 euros. I ended up paying 6,000 euros. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just grateful to God for the provision, because when I was paying this money, I was an angry woman. I was an annoyed babe. But as God would have it, here we are. Okay, next question. Can I take the theoretical exam in a language other than German? Yes, you can. If I remember correctly, the theory exams are actually in different languages. For me, I chose English, but you can have it in Arabic, Spanish, German. I think in Indian, I'm not 100% sure. The Urdu language, I'm not 100% sure. But mostly European languages plus Turkish and Arabic languages, because there are a couple of Arabic people living in Germany. So yes, you can. Are there specific medical requirements for obtaining the driver's license? As I said, you need to have the first aid and the eye test. These are the 2 medical related requirements that I did and that I know of. And like in one of the theory classes, I heard that if in the course of you driving, you make a driving mistake, not like you make a driving mistake, but more or less like you have an accident, or you drive carelessly and you're caught, they will take you for a psychological examination to know if your head is correct. You go for a psychological checkup. The way we drive in Nigeria, that their heads are upside down. If you do that here, you go to psychiatrist, let them know if the knot in your head is tightened, or maybe they'll help you tighten it well. So yeah, I'm not even joking, for real. It's either you go for that exam or they take your license from you. Once you go for the examination and you have like a doctor's report stating that, oh yes, you're mentally okay, everything is fine, before they give your license back to you. Like I said, getting the license is one thing, keeping it is another thing. And that's why when I feel some type of way, when I'm anxious, when I'm unsettled, when I'm not okay, I don't drive. Now that it's snowing, the ground is a bit slippery, I will not be caught on the wheels, except it's absolutely necessary. So no. What is the process for scheduling and taking the practical driving test? Oh, okay. I did mention earlier on, you have to go to driving school, then you get an appointment at the foreigner's office. In Berlin, it takes a while to get an appointment at the foreigner's office. So you just keep with the normal process of checking and rechecking and rechecking and rechecking until one day the Lord hears your cries and your prayers, and then you suddenly find an appointment date. Other than that, it's just vibes and prayers to get an appointment date. So you have to keep checking. So imagine that after all of the processes and you don't pass within the time frame. Remember I mentioned that time frame. Now I need to actually talk about this time frame very categorically because it's a bit tricky. You're given 1 year to pass the theory classes, and within the 1 year of passing the theory classes, you need to pass the practical exams. So for me, the theory was not that much of an issue. In my mind, I felt okay, the practical was going to be easy, not to do vroom vroom and that's it. Well, no, that was not it. I was almost at the expiration of my 1 year after passing the theory classes before I passed the practical classes. And so if I had not passed it then, I would go back to do the theory again and then do the pass the practical again. Now, when I say you start from the beginning, it doesn't mean you start from the whole process of going to the theory classes again. No, but you have to pass the theory exam. So that your theory exam expires after 1 year. And if you don't pass your practical within that 1 year, they assume you've forgotten, what you're supposed to do. And in Berlin, the reason it took me this long, at the end of the day, my budget or what I planned was that I was going to pass this exam in 6 months. It took me 1 year and 4 months to pass the exam and to get my driver's license. The reason it took me that long was because in Berlin, I think also because it's an international city, the demand of people that want driver's license is a bit high. So you don't go for classes every day. For me, at the time, I think in a week, I was going twice a week. In some cases, I'll go 3 times in 2 weeks. I wasn't going regularly. It wasn't like back to back. And because of that, it takes a while. And maybe I could travel, or maybe the teacher is sick, more time is being spent. And for the exam itself, you cannot just wake up one morning and just say, oh yeah, I want to get an exam date. No. The TUV center give the teachers slots, and the teachers, they fix exam for students based on priority. And by priority, they check whose expiration date is the closest. So the person takes the exam earliest. So if their expiration dates, anyone that the expiration date is getting close, they kind of prioritize them so that they don't have to start the process again. That's how it's kind of done. And so you need to, if you start, you need to just try, be strong. Now you see that I spent about 6K. It was at the time when I was paying for this, I just had to remove my mind. I cut out a lot of spending on, restaurants, the things I like to do, the enjoyment I like to do. I had to cut all of that, for me to have enough money to pay for this. Because if I stop the process halfway and I come back after a year, I start from the beginning. It's a lot of mental, and I didn't want to spend so much time. I already spent a lot of time in the process. I didn't want to spend more time in the process. So you need to keep this in mind when you're going for your process. And again, this is my own experience. I know that for some people, they get it very fast. It didn't happen for me like that. At a point, I was thinking maybe because I'm stupid, but I know I'm not a stupid person. I know that I tried my best. It was just not working for me like that. Let's talk about the reasons I failed my exams. In fact, if you want to know the reason, we'll talk about it in a different vlog. Let's focus on this one in this vlog. Anyways, we'll talk about it in a different video. Question number 7. Is there a probationary period for new drivers in Germany? Yes. When you get your license for the first time in Germany, you're on a 2-year probation period. And the 2 years probation period, within that timeline, you cannot be caught with alcohol in your system when you're driving. This I remember correctly, because they said if you're stopped by the police and they test you, because they have this breathing test that they do to know if you have alcohol in your system. For older drivers, there's a certain percentage that it wouldn't be a problem. But for new drivers, you have to have 0.0%. So when you're driving within that first 2 years of your probationary period, you can't be caught slacking. And they have different points. Again, if you lose so many points, I think if you get up to 8 points of disobeying traffic laws or maybe disobeying the license instructions, you go for psychiatric test to know if your brain is correct. Either that or they take your license. It depends on how serious the case is. They might take your license from you and you can't drive again in this country. They don't joke. They really don't joke. And that's why Germany has one of the lowest rate of accidents in the world. And to be honest, like the way they drive here, and it's also very quiet driving. You barely hear, drivers honking because everyone kind of knows what to do. Sometimes there's, slight mistakes that happen here or there, but they're actually quite patient in their driving. That's why after the experience here, I mentally don't think I can drive in Nigeria, to be honest. I don't think I can drive in a city like Lagos. Abuja, okay, maybe, but a city like Lagos can be me. Cannot be me. Question number 8. Are there any restrictions on the type of vehicles I can initially drive after obtaining my license? Yeah, there are restrictions depending on the kind of license you have. Some people go for the B class driver's license. So the B allows you to drive like normal vehicles. If you want to drive like scooters, you have to get a license for that. If you want to drive like buses, you have to get a license for that. Even with the B, when people are moving out, they have an additional van that they attach to their vehicles. They kind of trained us for it in our theory classes, but I think your license allows you to do that, but to a certain degree. I'm not 100% sure about this information because when I was doing all of this, I'm like, for me to drive, I need to be very good at driving like a normal car before I think of driving like a van. But yeah, you can. And when you get your license, they also show you the kind of vehicles that they are allowed to drive on that license. How long is the validity of the German driver's license? So when I passed my practical exams on the spot, they gave me a temporary license that I was supposed to have with me for I think about 4 weeks before they give you the card. But luckily my card came in earlier, so my card came in 2 weeks after I got that license, and my card is for 15 years. The validity is 15 years, and then afterwards I go to renew, and then it's forever. So generally, typically, the German driver's license is forever. And if you have your license, you can drive in any part of the world. German driver's license is valid for driving in anywhere in the world. So when I go to Spain, or I go to Greece, or I go to anywhere, I don't have to get especially if it's within the EU, I don't have to get an additional license. My German license, I can drive. But if I'm going to drive in Nigeria, I need to get an international driver's license. So if I'm going to drive outside of the EU, I have to get like an international driver's license. The last question: what happens if you fail the practical driving test? You write it again, my dear. If you fail it, you go again, you move, you keep writing it, you keep doing the practicals until you pass it, and hopefully you pass it within the timeline. So the reason I'm making this video, and I'm being completely honest, I'm being completely vulnerable here, even though some people will be like, you went for the classes 40 times and you wrote after all of this you wrote the test 3 times. Mind your business, go and do your own. Then you go, you see whether it's easy. You think I liked spending the money? No, but that was the circumstances. Initially, I was beating myself a lot about it. I felt like, oh yeah, maybe I was doing something wrong and maybe this and that. But no, I realized that this is just how my own path was. And I tried my best. I'm being vulnerable and I'm being very honest so that you can manage your expectations. I was told again, it's not going to take this long, but it took even longer for me. And I've also heard stories of people even telling me that my own case was not even as bad as theirs. I know someone that's been in this process for years. They start, they don't get it, they exceed the expiration time that it gives to them. They start the process from the beginning, and the more you do this, the more time is being spent, the more money is being spent. You begin to lose interest and you don't want to do it anymore. But I think getting a driver's license in Germany is important. It's just like one of the very important things to have. It's better you have it and you don't need it than you need it and you don't have it. And lately, there's been a lot of strikes with the public transport system. So you just want to have the option, how people have fuck you money. You have fuck you license. So the day the S-Bahn and the public transport system, they are moving mad, you just rent a car and you keep it moving. Right? For instance, I can decide, okay, my friends and I can just want to go on a drive, just to see the city without having to use the S-Bahn. You have the ability to do that. If, for instance, you want to, maybe you go to a different country. Germany is one of the few European countries that have very good transport system. There are some countries that the transportation system there is not great. If you go there, you'll just be stranded. So in this situation, I can just use my license to rent a vehicle and keep it moving. Like, it makes my life a lot easier. And when I don't have to, I just use the S-Bahn, you know. So I think for me, generally, it was a very good experience. It was very tough. It was very expensive. It took a lot of my time. It was also very draining, but it was one of my wins for 2023. One of the goals I prayed I wanted to have, and I got my license at the end of the day, and I'm so happy about that. And yeah, if you want to know why I failed my license exam, Lord, just put it in the comment section and I'll let you know. Talk about it. If you have other questions regarding the driver's license, I tried, to get questions from ChatGPT, and I tried to answer based on my own experience around that. I hope it helps. Let me know what you want to see in my next video, and I hope this was very helpful. If you haven't done so yet, please like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you in my next video.